Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben.
This is Diego Sanchez.
Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio. It's the 11th of April. Dennis Gradiff here with Kasper Rosalowski on a fun-packed episode of Submission Radio where we've got a current UFC champion, a man who's fighting for the UFC championship, and a young prospect who looks to have a title shot soon.
Yeah, it's a very juicy show, and in case you haven't figured it out already, which you probably haven't because we've given you like zero clues.
Imagine they had. That would be like, wow.
They would officially be...
No jobs or money, but come work for us.
Oh, yeah, they'd officially take the mantle of greatest detective in the world away from Batman, and Batman would be sulking, but... If you want to know who we've got Cody Garbrandt. He's going to be kicking off the show. He's got that big fight against Thomas Almeida. Main eventing, how's that? First main event in the UFC for him. So there's lots to talk about with him. Stipe Miocic, he's the man who is fighting for a title. That fight could change his life. Just a very quick appearance from Stipe. We don't have a lot of time with him, so we're just going to have a bit of fun with old Stipe. And then we got Demetrious Johnson, another one who's pressed for time. He's got that fight coming up in like 2 weeks, so he's probably got a crazy training schedule. So we're going to have Demetrious Johnson on the show to discuss a bunch of things, and then the show gets even more packed. We've got UFC Croatia that we're going to be discussing. Frank Mir, he's gotten himself into some hot water, some controversy, so we're going to be touching on that subject. Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes has been announced for UFC 200. Our thoughts on that, and also the UFC 200 card in general. It hasn't been finalized, but most of the fights are out there already, so we're going to be giving our initial thoughts on that card itself, so it's a pretty stacked show.
Yeah, that's right. And before we jump into it, guys, if you still haven't, jump on Twitter and follow us at Submission AUS. A lot of gifts, a lot of fun, a lot of jokes. And also on Facebook, it's a chance to sort of let us know what your thoughts are. It's facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS. We throw up the topics. You give us your thoughts. We give you our reactions, our responses. A lot of people messaging us over Facebook. Scott Davenport had a cool MMA fight and also showed us a little clip of his documentary. From time to time, we like to share what's going on in your lives. So make sure to keep touch and let us know what's happening. We love talking to our listeners, but without further ado, Cass, we've got our first guest on the line, and I believe you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is coming off a first-round TKO over Augusto Mendes back in February. He now takes on Thomas Almeida at UFC Fight Night 88 in the main event. He's none other than Cody Garbrandt. Cody, welcome back to the program. How's it going today?
Hey, thanks for having me back, fellas.
It's a real pleasure. Now, we saw you were battling a sinus infection last week, so we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. How's the sinus today anyway? Are you on the mend?
Oh yeah, I'm on the mats. Yeah, definitely on the mats. I'm feeling better. Sacramento, the city of the trees, so all the pollen and all that gets to me. So got a little sinus infection, but no big thing. Back to training and getting ready to whoop his ass May 29th.
Damn trees, mate. You on Twitter, you asked the fans to give you some remedies. Any crazy gypsy remedies that you've tried since?
Oh man, I don't know. I'll try anything to get better. Like I'm a little bitch when I'm sick, so I don't like to be sick. So I like to. All the fans that hit me up on, responded out to me on Twitter and helped me out some remedies. I ended up doing Medipot and like up my antibiotics and not antibiotics. I'm sorry, my vitamins. I kept my up that and try to rest as much as I can in between sessions. So that seemed to work and feeling better. So I'm good. I'm thankful.
I'm just curious because obviously we know Team Alpha Male is a pretty awesome team. Was there anyone making you chicken soup? I can see Joseph Benavidez ducking out to the store and making you a delicious broth.
I can see Joe doing that. Man, no. Actually, no. No one made me some chicken soup. I'm sitting for ourselves out here. That's why we do so well.
Man, he's got you fending him. So Joe Benavidez, he's losing his touch. He's the foodie on the team. I can see him not only getting chicken soup, but like knowing the best place in Sacramento to get the best chicken soup from. So Cody, before we discuss,
he's married now, so he's got to got to provide for his wife. So he's out there doing that. So I can't hate him for that and not bring me chicken noodle soup when I'm sick.
Priorities, man.
He's off getting chicken soup for someone else now. Now, before we discuss the fight itself, how does it feel to get the top bill and be main eventing your first UFC card, Cody?
Oh, man, I mean, when my managers and I talked with Sean Shelby about the initial, fight with Thomas Almeida in the main event, it's, a lot of emotion running through me. That's, something I look forward to. I worked hard, I worked my whole life for these times that are blessed upon me. Now it's about putting in this work so that, leading up to the fight and going out to performance. So super excited to go out there and, fight Thomas Almeida. It's a tough dude that everyone, is highly on. I can't wait to really show what level he's really at and what level I'm at. And that's definitely a level that he's not going to be able to match on May 29th.
So you got Thomas Almeida as your next opponent. He's ranked number 7, so it's a big step up in competition. Were you happy that you got him after obviously losing that fight with Lineker?
Am I happy? Was I happy with this fight with Almeida?
Yeah. Were you happy that you got Almeida? Because obviously he's ranked number 7, so it's a big step up in competition, but obviously a big name in the division.
This is the fight I asked for. This is the fight I asked for. I said I want John Lineker and I want Thomas Almeida, and Sean Shelby can contest to my words. Back me up on my word. That's what I said. John Lineker didn't show up February 21st, wherever the date was that we were supposed to fight. Our contracted bout was. I said I want Lineker, Almeida, title shot. When I knock Almeida out, it would be a title shot. I'm not looking over him right now, but this is where this is what my visions were, and that's the road to the title was through them two dudes. And now Almeida's on the chopping block, and I just can't wait to get in there and chop him down, punch by punch, kick by kick.
I know you asked for Almeida, but considering that you're ranked 15 and he's number 7, did the UFC give you any other options? You wanted Almeida, but did they say, look, we might give you a lower ranked opponent, or they were happy to give you Almeida from the get-go?
Yeah, it's kind of like they offered it to me, about the main event, and I was like, for sure, let's get it. Send the contract's over, sign it right now. So yeah, there was no other. I want to fight. The supposedly toughest, guys in my division. That's someone that's undefeated. That's that's making a lot of waves, and I can't wait to steal his thunder. You know what I mean? And really show the level that, like I said before, the level that he's at and the level that I'm at. I want to show him that there's a different level, and that's what I'm on.
I'm just curious, who do you think is a tougher test between Almeida and John Lineker?
I don't know. Probably Lineker, just because he's so wild. You know what I mean? He don't know how to fight. The guys are hard to fight. Almeida, it's going to be a little chess match. He likes to string the combinations together, and he likes to do some flashy shit that's going to get him caught and get him hurt. He wants to get in the, whatever he wants to be. He thinks he's a striker until he actually strikes with a striker. You can see that with Pickett. Pickett, showed him a valuable lesson in July. And Pickett's nowhere near on that. So I don't know. You can look at this. If you look at Thomas Almeida's record and be like, 21-0, he's this and that. But I look at this. If I'm 8-0, okay, and I'm at my point in my career right now. Thomas Almeida had to have 21 fights to be where he's at in his career. You know what I mean? So I don't know. The record don't mean shit to me. You could fight a bunch of bums, and that padded your record up. I'm 8-0. I'm fighting main events now. I'm fighting top guys, top 10 in the world at 8-0. Early on in my career. That's That's what I want to fight. That's what I set out in this fighting aspect, sport, whatever you want to call it, to fight the best and to challenge myself. So this is one of the best. I can't wait to prove myself against the best.
Well, you mentioned Brad Pickett, and he did have some early success against him before getting beaten. What are some holes you see in Thomas Almeida's game that you feel like you can take advantage of?
Everything. I'm a better martial artist than him all around. Wherever this fight's going to go, I'm going to dictate the pace. He's going to be my dancing partner. He's going to steps my beat. I guarantee that. He's got, he strings his combinations together. I'm a linear fighter. He's a linear fighter. He's forward, backwards. He's never had someone put the pressure on him, step off, do angles, all this shit. I'm not going to be there for him to hit, and then I'm going to counter him, hitting him with some hard shit. He's going to be like, damn, looking, trying to be a wrestler, try to take it down, use his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then he's going to be in a world of hurting, thinking, he's going to take me down and have his way with me on the ground, because no one's ever really seen that aspect of my game until it's like, oh, shit, I'm in deep waters, I'm in the choke, I'm tapping out, and, my hands raised, I'm on to the next fight. But, I'm a better athlete than him. I hit harder than him. I'm meaner than him. But this is the fight that I get up for. These are the fights that, hey, make me actually do the extra work. I have a threat in there, and I tell him he's trying to give me my first loss, I'm going to give him his first loss. I think he's trying to do that, but I'm going to do that. I really believe in myself. Like he said that he's going to knock me out in the second round. if you truly believe that you're the best, you're 20-0 and this and that, and everyone's praising you, you finish me in the first round. That's where he fucked up. He don't believe in himself. He believes that, I'm going to take him out in the first round and guarantee it, He better hope that his chin holds up in the first round so he can make his prediction right in the second round and take me out. But it's not going to happen. He's got no chin. I'm going to test that early on. And, it's a lot of big punches that he's not going to be able to survive. Big concussive punches that are going to not, turn his brain off for sure. He's got me fired up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can tell.
Well, obviously, both of you guys have really explosive and exciting styles. So we're basically saying, we're almost guaranteeing in your mind that this fight won't last the full 5 rounds.
Yeah. If it's got to go 5 rounds, it's got to go 5 rounds. You know what I mean? I could take this dude down and make it a fight where, I'll break him and, finish him later in the early rounds, or I could take him out fast. But this one, I'm a finisher. I've always been a finisher, and he wants to be a finisher too. So it's a really exciting fight, for the fans, for a lot of people, for the company. Main event, it's a good card to be able to main event here in Vegas Memorial Day weekend. I'm just excited, to get in there and create some weather with this dude. See what he's all about. I want to see what this hype's about. I've stopped a lot of hype trains in my time in my athletic career. So this is just another train that I'm gonna hit harder and stop.
You've said that you see yourself with the belt this year. With the winner of Almeida, a guy that many people see as a near future contender, do you think that puts you on the fast track and pretty much guarantees you the next title shot?
Yeah, I would think, you got to be at the top. You got to see there's some other guys up there. But, when I finish Almeida, Thomas Almeida on May 29th, I think that puts me in the front runner. You know what I mean? That's right there. It's 4-0 in the UFC, 3 knockouts, over Thomas Almeida, who was slated to be, we're going to chase the title. This is a title run. These are the fights that are going to, we're chasing that gold. I'm chasing the gold in my mind. I've been on a mission. I've been on a journey, and I feel like he feels the same way. So, yeah, definitely, it'll put me right up there as a knockout win over Thomas Almeida. I think that I should, get a title shot. Now I'm finishing these dudes. This dude's undefeated and just finishing everyone as well. So, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't not. But that's up to the matchmaker, Sean Shelby, Joe Silva, Ovince Saint Preux, Dana White, all those guys. I'm here to fight. Put the best fighters in front of me. That's supposed to, when I'm the champion, I want to earn that. I believe that what is earned cannot be given. And I want to fight the toughest guys in my division. So when I am the champion, that no one's like, oh, this was handed to you. I fought everybody that was ahead of me that was supposed to be this and that. I beat them all. And so whatever's after Almeida, my main focus is on him. Finishing on May 29th, and then regroup with my team, my managers, and the UFC, and seeing what's next step in my career.
Well, some big plans. And speaking of the title picture, your teammate Uriah Faber takes on Dominic Cruz for the 135-pound belt. We have to ask you, Cody, how do you see that fight going? Give us a preview.
They are 1-1. It's the rubber match, so this is going to tell a lot of what's up. Cruz just beat TJ in a good performance. Having the layoff, looked good doing it. Obviously, just the way they fought, it was an easy fight for Cruz. He just had to evade, land some counter strikes, hit some takedowns, and on TJ, and that's what, evidently the takedowns were different, and the counter striking and the movement. So he won that. Hats off to Dominic, coming over adversity. I really like that, coming back and doing that. But, Faber, he's a hard worker, man. You can never take him out of anything. He's mentally strong. He trains hard. He's, super dangerous, all over, well-rounded. I see Faber pulling away. This is, he wants his belt. This is something that he's been wanting forever. He's came so close and came really short. So it's, to get that belt, I don't see. There's nothing, I don't see him not getting the belt. In his mind, like he wants to get the belt. So I believe when you got a positive, motivated, individual that visualizes that, it's going to be a farewell fight. I'm going to rule a favor on this one.
You know, one thing I've noticed, because obviously Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz, they've got a heated rivalry, and it seems like it's now heated more than ever. But when you talk about Cruz, you've got a lot of respect for the guy. It doesn't really seem like that rivalry extends to yourself. Would that be a fair assessment? There's no animosity between Cruz, and you've actually got a lot of respect for the guy?
Oh, man, I'm not fighting Cruz. But if I were to fight Cruz, I whoop his ass, for sure. But I'm not fighting Cruz. I'm fighting Thomas Almeida. Him and Faber had their beef and rivalry for years, and you can say, Dominic and Team Alpha Male, and with all the fighters that he fought on Team Alpha Male.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, wherever to come, that me and Dominic were to trade some leather. I'm sure we'd be in a heated. I wouldn't like him either. You know what I mean? Anyone that's going to talk shit to me, I'm not going to be. Anyone that I fight, really, I don't care for you. I'm not there to be your friend, so I'm not going to text you. I'm not going to like your post on Instagram. Especially if you talk shit, you're going to tell me you're going to knock me out in the second round or any of that shit. That's just fuel to the fires, and a lot of fighters can't. They don't do well with that banner. They don't do well with that physiological mental warfare. For me, that makes it a fight. That makes it more of like a street fight, and that's what I like. That going in there like, all right, let's go. You got your boys, I got my boys. We're going to go in this, basically like old schoolyard and throw down.
Yeah.
Either the bad or dude is. So I enjoy this trash talking. To me, it gets, like I said, that makes me when I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to practice today. I don't know if I want to go do this extra work. That'll be like, this dude says he's going to knock you out in front of your mom. He's going to knock you out in front of your family. Second round. All right, I'm going to do sprints. So that gets me more motivated to do the road work. So him and Faber, I kind of kept up on it with a little bit. Him and Cruz, it's kind of funny. It's comical. Faber just kind of laid back, easy going, dude. Not much getting into him, but you can definitely tell there's a heated rivalry. Obviously, 1-1 going into this championship bout June 4th.
Well, when we spoke to you last time, you said that if Uriah wins the belt, he'll retire and go out on top. Now that the fight's getting closer, is that still the case? Will he definitely retire if he gets his hand raised, do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's in his mind or what he wants to do. That's another thing too. I knock out Thomas Almeida, I'll be knocking out a title fight. So I guess we've got to see how things play out and with that and what he wants to do after he wins the belt. So I guess we'll see. I don't know if I should take a back seat or whatever, but I guess time will tell. Personally, for me, if I was in Uriah's shoes, I would do the same thing. I would, why would I also have to prove I got the belt? I'm going to go out and enjoy my life, but that's up to him. He's a competitor. He's a fighter. He's been fighting for, since he's 24 years old, over a decade in the sport. It's hard to walk away from something, especially when you're on top. So I guess we'll have to see how things play out.
Well, obviously, if he does stick around, it might make things tough for you as far as title aspirations. I'm just wondering, if Uriah was the champion, would you take another route? Would you take another couple of fights to give him a little bit more time if he was the champion, so you guys wouldn't have to fight each other right away?
Yeah, man, I'm about, cashing checks and snapping necks. So definitely get some more fight, get some more money, whatever. But my dream has been to be the world champion since I was 12, 13 years old, and that's I don't think my life will be complete until I am the world champion. I'm chasing gold every day. I wake up and I'm just motivated and blessed and thankful to be able to live this lifestyle. Be able to be a martial artist, to chase this dream down, and have the courage enough to do it. And I'm not where I want to be at all. Even when I'm the champion, there's still room for improvement and to be greater and greater every day. So like I said, I'm trying to be world champion, and so I guess I got to see how things play out. Like I said, my main focus is on Thomas Almeida, May 29th, and destroying this dude, going in there and just being a savage, being a savage against this cat, and letting him know this is a fight. It ain't. I'm here to fight. All these guys that you fought before, they wait for you and let you do your little, your little shoot a box shit and your elbows and knees. I'm in there to fight, man. You tag me some good shit, I'm gonna hit you back with some even harder shit. So I'm just ready to scrap, and I'm thankful that the UFC has given me the main event slot. Has me busy, you know what I mean? Last year I only fought twice, and my debut with the UFC was last year. So I fought twice last year. I'm thankful that they're keeping me busy, and that's when mentally I stay focused, I stay hungry, I stay in the gym. Winning is contagious to me, and I feed off that, and I want to keep going, keep building, so I'm the world champion.
And I'm just curious because even though you're in the main event, there's another highly ranked bantamweight on that same card, Aljamain Sterling. He's in your division. He's also closing in on title shot. He's actually ranked number 4 at the moment, and he fights number 8 Brian Caraway on the same night as you. Do you think there's a bit of an invisible competition to see who gets the better win and impress the UFC brass to get that next title shot?
Shit, man. Fighting Brian Caraway, that's like a gimme fight, dude. That dude doesn't want to fight anybody. You know what I mean? So how are you going to say you're going to beat Brian Caraway when I beat Thomas Almeida? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Whatever. Weed out the weak in that division. You know what I mean? The cream rises to the top. And that's where I'm going to be at. So I guess I'll see you at the top no matter what. With anybody in my division, so Santos, all those cats there at the top. I'm coming for every one of them, everyone that's ranked ahead of me. Like I said, the cream rises to the top. So I guess we'll see. We'll all be there. We'll all be there, and that's what I think I like about fighting. Fighting, you fight for your own destiny. You hold your own ink and pen. The other guy's trying to steal your ink and write your future, but really you're in control of that when you get into the cage and you put your training and dedicate your life to this. So hard work doesn't lie.
Yeah, no, certainly. And obviously, Aljamain Sterling, like Casper mentioned, ranked pretty highly. I mean, there is a good chance you may fight him if you do beat Almeida instead of getting the title shot. What are your thoughts on Sterling as a fighter? And if you did get matched up with him next, how do you think that matchup would go?
Yeah, I mean, I really never watched Sterling fight, to be super honest with you. Never watched him fight. Kind of focused on myself. But whoever the UFC wants after I smash Thomas Almeida, game. Lineker, I hope he wins this fight and keeps climbing the top. I'm gonna whoop that dude's ass, super bad. But he's behind me right now. He's in my rear view. He's trying to play catch up with me, and so I don't know. I mean, like I say, we gotta see how things plan out. You got the title fight with Dominic Cruz, favor. See what's up there. You got TJ. You got Rothwell Sinsao. I like to fight Rothwell Sinsao too. I like to get him a win. How he's doing. There's Michael McDonald. There's Mizugaki, however you say it. All these guys are ranked ahead of me, man. I'm trying to take them all out. I'm trying to take them all out. So then this is my division, and I work hard, man. I worked hard for this my whole life, and it's finally paying off. And I'm getting the fights that I want. Now I get the fights that I want against some very socially skilled fighters. I can be like, wow, I can really show my skills, because I feel like when the lights are on, that's when I shine the brightest. Is when it's a big fight, it's a main event, it's against another undefeated fighter. You talked about as being a title contender, or he was a prospect and a title contender. So, yeah, man, this is where I feel like I'm really going to show out my skills finally against a fighter that is supposed to want to come fight. I'm just looking forward to it. So like I said, my focus is on Thomas. I really can't steer past that picture of Thomas's, Thomas right in front of me, and look to other fights or talk about other fights. But yeah, man, after I smash Almeida, we'll see who the UFC wants to give me. I'm down to fight whoever. That's what I got in this sport, is fighting the best. So whoever they be, that's the best next fight for me, I'll take.
For sure. Cody, we really appreciate the time you're giving us, and we'll let you go in just a moment. Just quickly before we let you go, just want to quickly touch on your training. You guys have had some reshuffling at Team Alpha Male as far as head coaches. Dwayne Ludwig spent some time there, then it was Martin Campman, and more recently Justin Buckles got the gig. How have you found Justin as a head coach so far?
Motivating, man. He's like my individual. He's one of us. We didn't have to pull out somewhere else. Like, hey, come in. We're gonna bring this dude in that we don't know. We're gonna have to all feel him out, that feeling out process, and see how Hey, Buckle's been there, for many years, man. I'm not sure how many years he's been, but he's been the OG. So he knows the system. He knows what it takes to make champions. And look, as soon as he stepped up, he's like, boom, I'm gonna bring in my coaches. Well, I want to bring in my assistants. So that's how a good head coach does things. Like, hey, I'm bringing my coaches and see what's up. Got Lance still teaching wrestling. You got Dan still teaching wrestling and helping out with MMA. So here's our coaches right now. We got Fabio Padilla, jiu-jitsu coach Chris Holdsworth. Justin Buckles is named the head coach, got Master Tong, Joey Rodriguez in here. So we have a stable of coaches that all come in and kind of like just, man, it really is like a co-op. You know, they all co-op. You know, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that, and like they're on the same page. And training's been great. And you know, the outcome of that, of Justin and the coaches stepping up and taking this 2016, we're 19-1 this season. This year in fighting, 19-1.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so that's right there. It's like, you know, you can do all that, you know, the percentage and whatever, like Dwayne wanted to do after he left and before he left. But like I said, we had our own guy come in here. You know, I mean, brought our own guy in. Buckle stepped up, and our head coach with other coaches stepped up, and things have been going great. Like I said, 18-1 on the year. I don't see any other team in the world at 18-1 with as many fights that we do, and as many active fighters that we have. You know, we're 18-1 on the season or the year, whatever you want to call it. And you know, we got Andre Healy coming up next. You know, myself, then Faber. So we got some big fights coming up. You know, we keep the continuous winning streak, and you know, keep getting better and better each day. The coaches that we have. So I'm very happy that you know, Danny Castillo, Chris Holdsworth, and Justin Buckles and Lance Palmer and all these guys have, you know, stepped up and really, you know, knew we needed to change, needed to switch up to, you know, to reign dominance again.
Well, Team Alpha Male is your home, but you've cross-trained at Jackson Wilco-John for your last fight. And word is you got along well with Brandon Gibson. Any plans to go back there and do some more training for this camp?
You know, probably off season, you know, and I in camp, you know, I like to switch around and change up, you know. It's good to get different looks. But no, I mean, I feel very comfortable with my coaches here. I got, you know, a routine. I like to try to get out of my routine, especially in fight camp. And, you know, Brandon came out here. You know, he's a great guy, great friend, great coach. He wants to, you know, see the best, bring out the best in me. And, you know, he came out here for a few days last camp. I actually didn't go there and train at all for my last fight. He came out here and trained me for a few days and trained the team and taught some classes. So we like Brandon, you know what I mean? Like, we're like Team Alpha Male versus everybody. And then we put like asterisks, like Brandon, you know, Coach Gibson.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, man. We got a good relationship with those guys out there, and you know, good stable guys out there, you know, well fighters. But you know, I'm sticking here and things are going great, and I can't, you know, wait to, you know, perform May 29th.
Oh, for sure. You and Thomas are made on May 29th. Second last question, Cody, and then I promise we're out of your hair. Again, sorry for taking so long.
No problem, man. Enjoy it.
I just want to clarify something, because last time we spoke to you, you were very adamant that you wouldn't be going to train at Team Elevation pretty much ever, especially given the recent circumstances, which is understandable. When we had TJ Dillashaw on the program, he claimed that this wasn't always the case and that you were initially excited about doing some cross-training there when the team was sort of coming together before all the drama. Was that the case?
I heard that shit.
Was that the case? Were you at any point looking at training there?
No, see, that's some fucked up shit. And I almost seen him at the Classic when I was there signing some shit and had to go say some shit to him. But my better judgment, I didn't. I actually didn't run into him. Anyways, long story short, no, that was fucked up. What he was trying to do was recruit people to go out there, take him from the team, you know, and go and help him. You know what I mean? But that was before I even knew what Team Elevation was. Like, I got to think, oh, yeah, you know, I did speak with Lisa Bourne in Canada about it. They all come out for a week, we'll pay you. Like, not thinking that they were going to build a team. You know, and then I caught wind. And Faber can contest this too. I told Faber, like, yeah, man, like, about to pay for a week. We talked about it. And then, you know, and then I heard him on your show talking shit, saying that I was going to go out there, this and that. I was going to go out there and help you out because I was understanding that you were still just training with Dwayne and could be on our team, you know, like you did last camp. And then I found out, I was like, oh, they're trying to start a team. And I was like, nah. And, you know, that was that. But, you know, and Faber, you know, I was up front with Faber about that the whole time when I said, yeah. And TJ, well, that motherfucker tried to, you know, take some of our teammates, you know, like Eric Sanchez. I'm kind of like, oh, come out here and I'll pay you this. Or when I come back in Sacramento, you know, train together, you know. So he was just trying to, you know, hey, if our team ain't good enough for you, motherfucker, get the fuck out. You know, we're trying to take our team, take our training partners. You know, if you don't believe that our team's good, and that shit pisses me off, man. For real, that's some fucked up shit. And then he wants to say some shit about my uncle. He's like, oh, he left his family to come out here. hey, you stupid motherfucker. I still, my uncle comes out here, trains me, comes to the fights. I never left him. I know what loyalty is, dude. You know what I mean? So I'm sure the next time I see him, we're going to have some fucking words for sure. That shit pissed me off, and I'm glad that you addressed that. So I did hear him talk some shit. And he talked some shit on Andre Feely, too. You know what I mean? I wasn't blessed with no, you know what I mean? I wasn't blessed with having a whole gym out here. So I've bounced around gyms my whole entire life, going to the best gym, and finally led me out here at Team Alpha Male. And I still bring my uncle, who's been my number one trainer, been my first trainer since I was 14 years old boxing. I still bring him out here with me. So he's gonna be, he's gonna be sitting there talking shit on an interview on your show, talking about he left his family. Don't ever fucking say I left my family, dude. That's some bullshit. You left your family and friends here to go to Denver, Colorado, and look what that got you. You got your ass beat.
Wow, there you go. Well, I mean, I guess I'm glad we asked that so you could clarify your side of the story. Final question, and then we're out of your hair, Cody. What's the official prediction? How are you beating Thomas Almeida at UFC Fight Night 88 on May 29th?
Savage stoppage, man. Knocking him out. Being stopped. So whoever round's going to come, but I'm going to test that chin early. Once I find that chin of his, he's going to sleep, and then it's off to the races, whatever after that. But Almeida, you got a fight on your hands, brother. Can't wait to, do this ass whoop May 29th.
Well, there you guys go. Follow Cody on Twitter at Cody_NoLove and watch him take on Almeida at UFC Fight Night 88, May 29, which also has fights such as Sterling versus Caraway, Brow moving up to fight Stevens, Masvidal versus Larkin, Berkman versus Felder, and I versus McMahon, plus lots more. A fun card. Make sure to check it out. And, of course, it's headlined by Cody No Love. Thank you so much for your time, Cody.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Hey, guys, this is Brian Stan. You're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is at this stage an undisputed Submission Radio alumni. He's fighting Fabrizio Verdun for the heavyweight title, UFC 198. Stone Cold Stipe Miocic, welcome back to the program. How's it going?
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on. What's going on?
No, it's all happening here. We're just on the heels of a big win by Junior Dos Santos over Ben Rothwell. Did you get a chance to see that fight, Stipe?
Yeah, I did. Junior looked good. He kept his distance, hit him with good shots, worked the body real well, and just, Ben really didn't have an answer, and that's what you're supposed to do, he had a good game plan.
For sure. People are saying that Junior's looking like his old self again. He did have that stretch where people questioning where he'd ever look like that again. Do you think that's the case, or it's a little bit early to tell?
I don't know. I think he's always been tough, just those always tough fights in UFC, doesn't matter what it is. I think he always looks good, he's just, some nights are good, some nights are bad, I've been there.
A part of you disappointed there was no hood for Ben Rothwell when he came out to the octagon? We were disappointed. We know Reebok's not letting him do it, but still a part of us dies inside every time we see him come out to the octagon without the cape.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, it is what it is. That's his thing, It sucks, but, it is what it is,
We can hear the disappointment in your voice, Stipe. Say no more. I'm just wondering, a win like that for Junior sends a strong message when you beat a guy with the momentum of a Ben Rothwell. Assuming all goes well, you become the new champion who beat Verdun at UFC 198. Do you think you may be facing Junior Dos Santos a second time around?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. It's what the UFC wants. I love to fight Junior again. I think it'd be an amazing fight between us. I know he's going to come out swinging just like me. I think it'd be a hell of a fight. A lot of leather was going to be thrown that night if we did a rematch.
Did you have any people on the ground there in Croatia, Stipe? Any reporters? Anyone telling you how the vibe was, how the event was, the feel over there?
I was texting Mirko Krokop a little bit.
Oh, that's not bad. What did he say? What did he say? Anything? Any juicy goss?
No, nothing at all. We're just friends, man. He's a good dude, great dude. So we're just texting back and forth, and he's just a good dude. I told him he looked good in his suit, And he said, "Thanks, buddy. Miss you." I said, "Miss you too." And he said, "Junior won." I said, "Yeah, I'm watching the fight too." So, but thanks for the heads up, Just normal chit chat, Yeah,
Krokop doesn't believe there's television over in Cleveland. He wants to give you that's why SMS.
You tell him that.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, now, Steve, you're fresh off your trip down to Brazil for the UFC 198 press conference. We saw there was some photo bombing going on during your time there. Describe the photo bombing. Did you initiate it? Do you have any regrets of any photo bombing actions?
What do you mean, my face?
Well, no, we've got nothing against your face, Stipe. It's absolutely beautiful. But people were taking photos, and then you got in their photos as well. And bam, there's Stipe Miocic in the background of 50% of the photos taken at the Brazil press conference.
I had no idea, I guess. It was that serious. I mean, I wasn't trying to photobomb. I mean, I was the only guy that was speaking English. I didn't know how to speak Portuguese, So it felt it was kind of sucky, because they were having a great conversation, laughing, and I wanted to laugh with them.
Did you ever do the fake laugh, like where you just rock up and you're like,
oh yeah, I just started laughing. They all looked at me. They started laughing because they knew I had no idea what they were talking about. But I just laughed anyway. We had fun with it. It was a good time.
Yeah, they're like Stipe, like something really serious, and you're like, ah, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's great.
Pissed, yeah. No, they were all nice. That was all a great time down there.
Well, this isn't the first time you'd be fighting in Brazil. You, of course, beat Fabio Maldonado, a tough Brazil finale. What was your reaction when you'd find out you'd be fighting for the title in Brazil? Was there any hesitation?
No, not at all, man. I fought there before. It's great. We get to fight in a huge soccer stadium. 45,000 people are going to be there. It's an amazing time, and it's my time. I'm going to win that belt.
Big stadium. We know Anderson Silva was there as well. Did you have any interactions with Anderson? And did you by any chance happen to bump into Steven Seagal? We know he likes to show a move or two to the Brazilians from time to time.
Did not see Steven Seagal, but I did talk to Anderson a little bit. Super, occasionally. Saw each other in the morning and stuff like that. We were on the same bus together, shuttle bus. Super good dude. We were laughing. We talked about a few things, and good dude, real quiet. Just fun dude.
Yeah, he's known to turn on and off the English, depending on whether he likes somebody. So did he turn the English on for you, or did he bring in a translator to translate everything over in the bus?
We were talking English together. He was great. We were just talking about stuff. Everyone was nice down there.
It's a bit of a flight from the US to Brazil and back. We're just curious, do you just sleep right through the flight, or you kind of like Bear Grylls of the sky and you pack a whole bunch of different things when to keep you entertained on the flight?
Oh, well, it depends how tight I am, I slept on the way home, on the way down there. And I slept a little bit, but I have a Nintendo 3DS, so I play video games and stuff like that. I watch movies.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a bit tired right now, Steve. A bit of a yawn throughout the interview.
I just got done with dinner at the station, so I'm a little tired.
Oh, good. I was thinking we were putting you to sleep for a second. But,
no, never.
Well, me and Casper, we have a bit of a ritual. We always like to get some sort of magazine from the airport news agency before we jump on the plane. If Stipe is at the news agency perusing Stipe publications for the flight, what magazine does he buy?
Home and Garden.
No way.
Really? Man. We'll see if we make sure. No, not at all. I don't know. Probably like Sports Illustrated or like ESPN. I don't know, or Fighter Magazine. I don't know, or UFC, wherever they have. I usually get a magazine. Or actually, I get Sudoku. I like getting that. I like doing that.
You're like an onion, Stipe. So many layers to you. Every time you come on, we learn something new. I thought for a second maybe you had the best garden in all of Cleveland, but it's not the case. Also, no. Dennis and I, we love getting the emergency aisle because, we want to help people. Just kidding. It's for the extra leg room. Seeing as you're a firefighter and your job is to basically save people's lives for a living, you're actually there right now. Do you avoid the emergency aisle on a flight, or do you embrace it?
No, I embrace it, man. Listen, if I get more leg room, I'll do what I got to do. Plus, I'm the first one off.
Yeah. Well, if you embrace it, do you ever cut off the girl who's explaining the what to do in case of emergency card to other emergency aisle passengers and explain you're a potential UFC heavyweight champion and a paramedic/firefighter, damn it, so everyone can go back to sleep because Uncle Stipe's got this one?
No. I usually have my headphones on. I get yelled at if I have my headphones on until she asks me the question. I always forget. And then
the nerve.
But no,
they yell at you.
It's my fault. It was being rude to me. I just wasn't paying attention. I feel bad.
You need to show them a video of you yelling at Dana White just so they know that you can yell as well.
Yeah, right. So, this is me. I yell at my boss.
So what happens when Stipe doesn't get his way? All right, let's talk about the big fight. We often hear that in the first few stare downs, fighters notice something about their opponent. In the case of Andrei Arlovski, it could be his, flashy and impressive dress sense. What did you notice about Verdun when finally going face to face with him?
I don't know. He's Brazilian. He speaks Portuguese. I know he has that face he always makes. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I really don't care, man. I mean, honestly, I don't really care what he does or presence on him. I just, listen, man, I'm here to fight. I'm going to win the fight. That's all I care about.
Well, he's known for his happy face. I want you to describe your thoughts on this expression. And does Stipe have a patented expression of facial mannerism that you can pull out if you win at UFC 198?
I mean, that's his thing, It's just like Ben with his cape and stuff. I mean, it is what it is.
I think you should just, if you win, you should wear a cape and do the face. Just take both of their things.
No, man, no.
Gimmick
listen, man, I got nothing. Listen, man, I'm pretty even keel. I just go out there and do my job. I don't need to have a persona or do a face or some kind of thing. I just do what I do.
Yeah. Well, you could take a baseball bat. We know you're a big fan of baseball. You know, once potentially a baseball player. You could be like the Sting of the UFC. But in all seriousness, Verdum has arguably had one of the most impressive careers in the heavyweight division, being obviously the first man to beat Fedor, beating Cain Velasquez, submitting De Guerra, when many thought he was, when Cain Velasquez was unbeatable. What do you think about him and what he's been able to achieve thus far?
Oh, I mean, he's doing great. I mean, he's doing amazing. That's why he's a champ. He's fought the best fighters and beat the best fighters. But I'm a different fighter. I'm walking in, and I think he knows that. And it's gonna be a rough night for him. It's gonna be a hell of a fight. I'll tell you that right now.
You, obviously, when listing his accomplishments, he seems like a very big deal. You faced a lot of tough opponents in your career, though. Do you think he's the toughest test? I know this one's for the title, but do you think he's the best opponent you've ever versed?
Yeah, of course. I think every fight is the best opponent you face. Every fight is like a title fight, because it's the most important fight of your life, no matter if it's a title fight or not. We all have goals, and, I think every fight that you fight, that guy's the best fighter in the world at that point.
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, Verdum's sort of been underrated by his opponents and fans for a long time. Do you think that's been a big downfall for his opponents in the past, sort of underestimating his skills and where he's at in his game?
Well, I mean, no, I think he's just good. He's got good coaching. He does his job. He's smart. He's a smart fighter. He knows what's going on. He's been around for a while. And he's doing everything right.
Was there a point where you thought, all right, when Verdum came in the division, that he'd be the champion? Be honest with us, Stipe, because a lot of people didn't think it was going to happen, him coming over from Strikeforce. Even after beating Fedor, there were a lot of people saying he didn't have the cardio, he didn't have the skill. He really surprised a lot of people.
All right, listen, man, it's a heavyweight division. Anything can happen. You wear 4-ounce gloves. I mean, sometimes it's a guessing game with the heavyweight division. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, one guy you never thought would win, all of a sudden drops the guy that was supposed to win by, anything can happen, man. It's MMA.
Verdum's obviously known for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but how much of an advantage do you feel like you have on the feet against him?
I think I have advantage everywhere. I know he's good on the ground, but also I'm a good wrestler. If we're going to feet, I think I'm on the feet, and I think wherever it goes, I'll have an advantage everywhere.
Okay, well, I mean, that was going to be my next question, because you are a strong wrestler and you aren't afraid to take the fight to the ground. Are you telling us right now, Stipe, that if you're fighting when you're fighting Verdum at UFC 198, who's the most dangerous ground specialist in the division, you won't avoid the ground and you will be open to taking him down?
No, I mean, if whatever happens, man. It's a fight. If it goes to the ground, I'll be smart about what I do. I mean, anyone could get submitted. I mean, even if you're a black belt or not, I mean, it's part of the game. Look at Ben Rothwell. I don't think he's a black belt, but he choked out Josh Barnett. I mean,
are you saying you've got a few sneaky chokes or surprises for Verdum heading UFC 198?
We'll see what happens, man.
The Cleveland choke. You need the baseball bat for that one.
Yeah, right. The Cleveland choke. Yeah.
There it is. Let's talk.
He's awake, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, 10 minutes into the interview.
Let's talk training. You train at a strong style gym. Do you have any BJJ masters coming in to spar with you, and any other big changes in training partners for this one?
No, we're getting some good BJJ guys. We're some guys should be coming in the next week or two. I've been having guys come in, sporadically, helping me out when I need it. We have, a couple guys coming in to help me, spar, good stand-up kickboxer guys. So, we had a great camp. Nothing, terribly different, just, being smarter with the way we train. So I'm not overtraining and hurting myself, just being smart and, getting the best out of me.
Now, you guys seem pretty close and tight-knit down there at Strong Style. I'm just wondering, when you train for opponents, do you bring in specific training partners for those opponents, or are you one of those guys that mainly focuses on just what he's doing? Or in the case of, say, Junior Dos Santos, did you bring in a specific striker, and here for Verdum, you bring in specific guys?
Yeah, we do, but I mean, it all roughly about the same, with guys fighting, but we do bring in guys. I don't have a lot of big guys at my gym. I do, but I like to bring in something different because it's something I don't see and so I don't get used to. It's like a fight almost. So yeah, we bring guys in. It works out well.
Yeah, well, Strong Style hasn't had a big spotlight on it like King's MMA, where Verdum trains under guys like Rafael Cordero. For people who don't really know much about Strong Style, what makes the gym so special, Stipe?
We're all homegrown, man. We just we bust our ass and we take no prisoners, man. We just go out there and we fight. The guy might be better than us, but we'll have a better game plan. We have better condition. We're just harder nosed fighters. We want it more.
All right, well, I mean, I guess it's time for that moment. Give us the prediction. I know that a lot of people don't like giving predictions, but how's the fight going down at UFC 198 against Fabrizio Verdum? If you visualize it, what do you see? How's it going down?
Well, you'll see when my hand's raised on May 14th. You'll see how I did it.
And just for the people traveling up to Brazil, what are we talking about here? Cleveland T-shirts will guarantee a photo with Stipe. What do they need to do?
What's that?
Well, I know last time in the lobby, you took some photos with someone wearing a Cleveland T-shirt. What do the fans need to do over there in Brazil? Let them know now so they can prepare if they're flying over to see it. What do they need to do? If they're in the lobby, what do they need to wear to get a photo with Stipe?
Just ask me. You don't even have to do that. Just ask me. I'll stop and give you a photo.
Okay, well, you're gonna make it sound
I'm a
tough,
nice
man.
guy. I'm not gonna be like shunning you or anything like that. Like definitely, thank you.
He's an easygoing guy. Here's a theory. Verdum was joking about getting a bunch of Fabrizio Verdum masks, and so the whole arena would be full of Verdums looking back at you. Have you thought about countering that and maybe printing off a few Stipe masks?
No, because my head's so big, it'd be too much money.
But then you'd only need like 3 masks, and the whole arena would be filled up.
I pretty much just one, I think, just to just the equivalent. It'd be terrible.
Oh my God, I would do anything to get Reebok to release a Stipe mask. Am I crazy here, or is this a great idea? We can go into business together, Stipe.
Let's do it, man. As we can be entrepreneurs, man, we'll make a lot of money.
Well, for now, we'll work on the business plan. But for now, guys, make sure to check out what is a nicely stacked card headlined by Stipe in a fight for the heavyweight title, UFC 198, May 14. And follow Stipe and his hilarious Twitter account at Stipe Miocic UFC. Also, check out his new T-shirts at clevelandclothing.com. There's 2 pretty sweet designs to choose from. Stipe, which one should the people go for? Do you have a favorite? It's like your children. Do you have a favorite?
No. I like them both, man. They're awesome. They're just Cleveland Clothing. They're a badass company. I'm super pumped they jumped aboard. Let me jump aboard, actually.
Yeah, well, make sure you guys go out and get those shirts. And, of course, Stipe, hopefully there'll be some shirts with your face and World Heavyweight Championship on them again. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Wherever, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. And you guys have a wonderful day.
Hey, everybody. This is Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley. You are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is the king at 125 pounds and the current and only UFC flyweight champion. He will be taking on Henry Cejudo at UFC 197, and today he joined us, Demetrious Johnson. Thanks for taking the time. Welcome back to the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. We know you're super busy, man. Obviously, you got this big fight coming up at UFC 197. Not only that, you've pretty much got a side job with this whole Twitch thing. Twitch is blowing up. And, in the past, we've missed a lot of important life events due to video games. Just checking. You're still training, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Still training. Got 1 more week left, and then I got the fight week, which is media, and getting the weight down, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, it's so much going on. We have to ask you, though, what are you playing these days? What are you playing going into UFC 197?
I'm playing Division on PS4, also waiting for Dark Souls 3 to drop, which is this Tuesday, April 12th. And then I'm also playing Street Fighter 5. Those are my 3 main games I show on my stream.
So the fight the many people expected has finally come together. You versus Henry Cejudo. You seem like you're always motivated regardless of the opponent, but do you get a bit more excited knowing that you've got a fresh challenger in Henry Cejudo?
Absolutely. When taking on a fresh challenger like Henry Cejudo, gold medalist, it's always fun to get somebody fresh into the octagon with me. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and it's gonna be a good one.
It's interesting because obviously Cejudo is an Olympic gold medalist. Is that something special for you, being able to take on an athlete of his caliber and being able to beat an Olympic gold medalist?
Yes, yes, but everybody that I fought in the division so far has a resume. Taking on a 2-time world Sambo champion and Ali Baghatinov. Taking on John Dotson, who's won the Ultimate Fighter. All these guys got resumes, and for me, it's just another fight.
He's spoken about how he has the style to neutralize your strengths, which are obviously your striking and your wrestling. When you study tape on him, do you think he brings anything different to the table than your past opponents? Is he in a different level of challenge, or do you put him on the same level as, say, John Dodson or Benavidez or Bogatinov?
Well, they always bring in different challenges. I mean, that's like the perks of always fighting somebody new. But it's always, you can always sit down and look at tape, but until you get in there with me or try to get in there with those guys, they see it like, oh yeah, everybody talks about Demetrious Johnson being fast, his cardio, his wrestling, his ability to switch it up, to switch from different arts of combat, fluid. And when they get in there with me, they're like, holy shiza. Yeah, this is what we saw on tape, and I'm not prepared for it. So that's what I think is going to happen, but we'll have to see.
What would you say is his biggest challenge? You're obviously going to go in there and try and dismantle that challenge and overcome it. What do you think is the biggest challenge of overcoming someone like a Cejudo?
It's not about overcoming a guy like Cejudo or anybody. It's just me overcoming myself. Make sure I go out there, feel good, I get in my rhythm, be sharp, and go out there and fight. So, I was thinking the other day, and I was like, when I'm fighting these guys, I'm not fighting these guys, I'm fighting myself. I just need to go out there and do what I do best, and which is win.
It's interesting that you say that because you're getting close to an Anderson Silva record of most title defenses, which is 10, and you're currently at 7. GSP, who had 9, famously spoke about the pressures of being champion and how it takes a toll over time. And the more wins you rack up. Anderson also seems to have a bit of that towards the end. Do you feel that in a way you can relate to these guys in that sense, where you, even though you defended your belt many, many times, it becomes more harder and harder mentally? Or are you not feeling that kind of pressure yet?
Yeah, I'm not feeling that pressure, to be honest with you. I have the only time I think about fighting is when I do interviews and people ask me questions. So, once this interview is done, I'm not even going to think about fighting. I have my kids, I have my wife, I have a life. I'm thinking about, getting my pressure washer out, pressure washing my fence. Those things keep my mind off of, mixed martial arts. And that's why I think I'm going to have that mental drain. When I get out there, and once I make weight, and then I go away from fighting, even down there in Vegas sometimes, and I'm about to fight, I'm not even thinking about fighting. I'm not thinking about what can I go do to pass time and go have a good night. And then, Matt Hume always has to remind me, like, dude, we got a fight Saturday. I'm like, oh, shit, that's right, we have a fight Saturday. And I just feel when people are so their minds are always on fighting, it's just wasted energy. At the end of the day, we're going to fight, and all the energy will come out on Saturday night.
And just to clarify, have you pressure washed your fence yet, or is this something that you're planning to do leading into UFC 197 a little bit sooner?
I have not got around to pressure washing my fence. I did pick up a brand new pressure washer. Shout out to Lowe's. But I haven't got around to it. I was going to pressure wash it today, but the weather was very cold this morning, and now the sun's starting to come out, so we'll see what happens. I got to finish laundry first, so.
This is the most humanizing side of Demetrious Johnson yet. I mean, flyweight, UFC title belt, and the cleanest fence in probably the whole area. Is there anything you can't do? And I'm just curious, is that the norm, Demetrious? You say you sort of don't think too much about fighting during that lead up. Do you think you're an isolated incident, or do you think it's just a case where most fighters are like that and they try and take their minds off it?
I don't know, because I don't hang around most fighters. For me, it's just, this is my life. I never put my life on hold whenever there was for a fight. And I think that's one of my perks that helps me out. If I'll sit here and think about my fight 24/7, then I think I'll be mentally drained. But when I go to my fights, I'm not mentally drained. People ask me, dude, how do you stay focused for 25 minutes? When you're fighting, I was like, I just got to be focused for 25 minutes. I'm mentally prepared and mentally dialed in when we're fighting for 25 minutes. So the whole time when I'm not in that octagon, I'm just out relaxing, having a good time, and spend time with the kids and try to get shit done around the house.
It seems like a lot of fighters these days, their identity becomes fighting, especially once they become champion. And then once they lose that title, it's a little bit difficult for them. Would you say for yourself, your identity is a lot more than the title? Obviously, you're a dad. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You've got a lot of other interests. Would you say it's sort of like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The title does not define who I am. The title just shows what I am capable of doing in the sport of mixed martial arts, and that I am a champion. And I never attach that outcome to my fights. Regardless when I win my fights or I lose them, I'm always humble in defeat or victory, and I always go back home and continue to work, become the perfect martial artist. So that will never change whether I'm the champion or not.
All right. Well, let's look at this card. Balance has now been restored, but UFC 197 took a temporary blow at one point. What was your initial reaction when you heard that Daniel Cormier had withdrawn from the main event?
It sucks, but it's part of the game. Daniel Cormier, he's getting older. He's like 36 now, 36, 37. So he's got to train the way they train. It's not just Daniel Cormier, but there's a lot of guys out there who get injured. The guys got to think about the way they train and just be focused and be smart about things. Give your body the nutrition it needs, so your muscles have a lot of water in them, so you're not pulling or tearing anything. But it's part of the game. The card will go on without Daniel Cormier. We got OSP stepping up, so shout out to him, and it's going to be a great card.
I'm just curious, at any point did you think that you may be headlining that card? And Is that a plus or a minus? Is there more pressure that comes with that for you? Are you happy to be in the co-main event spot more than the main event spot?
At one point, I thought I was going to headline the card, but when I heard the UFC was looking for a replacement, I knew someone was going to step up and take on Jon Jones. I mean, that's a great opportunity in itself. For me, I'm content with being the main event and also being the co-main event, especially behind Jon Jones. This isn't the first time I've had to co-main behind him, and it's not the first time I almost took his step in for him because he had a little legal trouble as well.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, what do you think about Jon Jones accepting the fight against OSPN? Considering that in the past he's been reluctant to take fights on short notice. Obviously, the most famous one being UFC 151, and I'm not placing blame here, but did it surprise you that he took the short notice option?
No, not at all. I mean, the guy's been out for a year and a half, so I think he wanted to get back in there, get his groove back. He hasn't got a paycheck for that long. I'm not saying he's hurt it for money or anything, but why not? I mean, why not? He's only getting older, so why not take advantage? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about preparing for the person you're going to be fighting. It's about preparing for you to be the best Jon Jones or Demetrious Johnson on April 23rd. So that's why I tell people I am a date type of guy. If the UFC was to call me right now and says, hey, Henry Cejudo got hurt, he blew his ACL out, we're looking for a replacement for you, there would not be one split second on mine where it's like, okay, sounds good, just tell me who you have for, the opponent. Obviously, Matt Taylor makes the final say so, whatever we do. But for me, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, no, certainly. Now, we obviously know that you're looking at beating Anderson Silva's record for most title defenses, but just to clarify, are you also looking to set the record for most consecutive wins in the UFC, which is 16, or is it strictly title defenses that you're focusing on?
Right now, it's strictly just title defense, because I didn't even know what the record was for most consecutive wins, so I was a little oblivious to that. But for me, it's just title defenses.
I'm curious about something, Demetrious. Nate Diaz recently made some headlines when he claimed that the title is a fairy tale and how being the champion doesn't always get you the biggest paydays. I'm just wondering, is it something that bothers you when you see fighters who may be somewhere in the middle of the top 10 getting paid more than yourself?
I can't say it irritates me or it sucks, but, I think that's the model that the UFC is trying to go. If you bring that to the table, you deserve to get that. Hopefully one day that, I come from a background where you work, your performance and how hard your work gives you that type of payday. So which I'm still working for, but I'm happy that, Diaz had the opportunity to get that, and I don't think he would have never got that if it wasn't for Conor McGregor. So, at the end of the day, I think if that fight would ever happen between him and Conor McGregor, I don't think Diaz would have got that payday, which, it takes two to tango, but if he was to step in and fight, a Frankie Edgar, I'm pretty sure his paycheck would have been $500,000.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously the big news, Demetrious, that you now know about is the big Ultimate Fighter 24 that's been announced. The winner to face you for a potential for a title shot. It's something that's been pretty crazy. Everybody's been discussing it in the world of MMA. It's a crazy concept because obviously the division has a lot of talent in there, Joseph Benavidez, but there are also guys that you've beaten previously. A lot of people saying this is a good option because it gives you an opportunity to face someone fresh and new. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on Ultimate Fighter 24?
My thoughts are, the UFC likes to keep on doing. I think it's great that they're getting the flyweights a chance to get into the house and showcase that on national television. But I haven't really had a chance to digest it because, I'm focused on Henry Cejudo. For me, that the flyweight division, the tough 24 doesn't even exist to me because if I don't get past Henry Cejudo, then they won't even be facing me. So for that, it's awesome the UFC is doing it. But right now, we're focused on Henry Cejudo.
Sure. And unlike past shows, the winner of the season will be determined on the show, and then they'll fight for the belt in December at the Tough 24 finale. So your next fight after Henry Cejudo, it's more or less booked. How do you feel knowing that you'll have that kind of break in between fights, I think around about just over 6 months? Are you fine with only having 2 fights this year?
I'm fine with having 2 fights this year, but I don't want to wait all into December. I told the UFC that I like to stay pretty active. And I like fighting in September. That's kind of like the schedule I've been going on, fighting April and September. So I would like to fight in September. Then, if they want to have me fight in February, get a guy who won Ultimate Fighter December off, and then January, February, fight February. I'm happy with that. But I like to stay active. I don't like to wait on people to be successful in this sport because at the end of the day, my timer and my age is getting up there, and the longer I sit on the shelf, the longer I'm not making money.
Completely understandable. Now, I know that all your focus is on Henry Cejudo that you fight in just a couple of weeks, but I'm just wondering, if you were to fight in September, have you thought about any possibilities? Because you beat Henry Cejudo, a lot of people are saying he's pretty much cleaned out the division. Do you think that would be a fight at flyweight, or would you entertain the idea if they say, hey, here's a bunch of money, we may want you to do a bantamweight fight? Would that be a possibility for you?
Yeah, anything's possible, especially when money comes into play. But like I said, I'm more focused on breaking that title defense. So if I don't, like I said, I don't care about who I fight. I just like to have a date and then get myself ready for that.
Well, let's talk about the big fight. We have to get an official prediction from you as we wrap up this interview. How do you see this fight playing out, and how are you being Henry Cejudo at UFC 197?
I never give predictions. Haven't given predictions since I was an amateur fighter, and I had 26 amateur fights. So never give predictions. I just say give myself a long night, and I'm going to go out there and do my best.
Well, you can't blame us for trying, Demetrious. Guys, check out DJ at UFC 197, April 23rd or 24th here in Australia, and follow him on Twitter at Mighty Mouse UFC. Demetrious, we really appreciate the time. Best of luck in your next title defense, UFC 197.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys, it's UFC light heavyweight Ryan Bader, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
And there he is, guys, Demetrious Johnson. Always a pleasure having him on the show. And again, can't stress this enough. The guy's extremely busy these days. He's literally got a fight in a couple of weeks. So we really appreciate him taking the time to stop by and chat with us on the show. Now, moving on to a whole bunch of other things. There is a lot to talk about. So we're going to start off with UFC Croatia and then move on to some other subjects. We'll be covering the last two fights on the card. Gabriel Gonzaga, Derek Lewis. First one we're going to start off with. Derek Lewis gets the biggest win of his career, knocking out Gabriel Gonzaga. Dennis, your general thoughts on the fight. How did this one sit with you?
Yeah, well, I was surprised. I really thought Gonzaga was going to beat him. Lewis with the first round KO. One of the things that really sort of impressed me about Lewis was the fact that Gonzaga was able to get him down on the ground and Lewis was able to escape the position. I really expected more from Gonzaga at that point in the fight. I really thought he was going to take advantage and probably, finish Lewis off. But there you go. It looks like Lewis has been working on his grappling. I was surprised, but there were a lot of people that were picking Lewis for this one. I think a lot of people see Gonzaga slowing down, and I guess in a lot of ways, this fight sort of showed it. What about you, Cass? Anything that stood out to you in this one?
Yeah, well, my prediction, it's locked in there in cement. I play EA UFC 2, and you get bonus points when you do your picks for live fights, and I actually picked Derek Lewis for a first-round KO, so there's going to be raining points for me in EA UFC 2.
What do you spend the points on? What can you buy with them?
T-shirts and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Nah, you buy moves for your characters. There's this thing called Ultimate Team, and you buy cards. It's like Pokemon, but with fighters, and you get moves like spinning kicks and shit like that. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get a crisp jab for my fighter or something like that. He's got a terrible overall rating. So old Casper, he's like old Gil, needs some points. But I actually picked Derek Lewis to beat him. I thought that with Gonzaga, he's suffered a lot of knockouts lately in his career. He's coming off a less than impressive, incredibly uneventful fight in his last fight, even though he won. Before that, I think he was on 3 losses in a row. Derek Lewis, if it was a ground battle, I would fully expect Gabriel Gonzaga to win. I thought when he got him to the ground, personally, I was surprised. I didn't think he would. Gonzaga never has had the greatest wrestling. As far as getting inside, he's always found it tough. His clinch has always been decent. I thought that in scrambles, Gonzaga might catch him with a sneaky choke, but as long as it stays standing, I thought that Gonzaga was getting knocked out. I will say, though, the best part of Gonzaga's fight was slowing the fight down, getting it against the cage, and I really thought that Derek had more in him against the clinch. In the past, we've seen he's got nice trips and decent throws, so I was a little bit surprised there, but the fact that Gonzaga was knocked out by the end of the first round didn't really surprise me much.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. Another little highlight, by the way, before we jump into the futures of both of these fighters is there was a post-fight interview on Fox Sports, and Derek Lewis said he wanted to go have a shower because he felt like Gonzaga was a very, very hairy porn star. And I thought, hey, what a great assumption there from Lewis. So a bit of humor there from Lewis. But I mean, a lot of people sort of wondering what's next for these fighters. I guess let's start maybe with Gonzaga first. His first UFC run and his first fight in the UFC during his first UFC run was actually at UFC 56, November 2005. He beat a guy called Kevin Jordan via third round KO. That card was actually headlined by Rich Franklin and Nate Corey. I actually had a look through that card, and most of the people on that card are now long gone from UFC, and I think a lot of them are retired.
And I mean, he's been in the UFC for a while. I know this is his second run, but his 2 runs were quite close to each other. It seems like Gonzaga might be at the end of his road here, Cass.
Well, look, before his win over Konstantin Arokin, he lost to Stipe, he lost to Matt Mitrione, and he lost to Krokop in a fight that a lot of people were picking Gonzaga. Like I said, incredibly uneventful last fight where he picked up the win, and now he lost against Derek Lewis. Add to that, he's had a lot of KO losses. I mean, you see fighters getting cut from the UFC for less. I'm not saying I want Gonzaga out of the UFC, but, this run, it just hasn't really been all that successful. I don't think we're going to see too much more of Gonzaga in the UFC, unfortunately for him.
It's one of those interesting situations because you had Rochold, who was cut from the UFC after he didn't have a terrible record, but obviously a wrestler in his fights weren't, the most exciting affairs. And here you've got Gonzaga, who's had a good history in the UFC, a lot of highlights, but also, a lot of lowlights, and now they're sort of adding up. Do you think they give him one more fight, or do you think he may be released in due course?
Well, I'm a nice guy, so I hope he has one more fight, but I'm just saying, I think 4 out of his 5 losses have been knockouts. I'm just saying he needs to start, being careful about his, his health and well-being. And I guess the question is it really worth it? He can go to lower shows and fight lesser competition and potentially pick up wins. I don't know how the money's going to compare to what he's making in the UFC. If it is a case of he knows he's at the end of his road and he wants to make as much money as possible, maybe it's worth sticking around, getting one more fight, punching that ticket, and then, building that nest egg. But I mean, I definitely don't see him lasting very, very much longer in the UFC. He's not ranked in the top 15. I don't know how many winnable fights there are for him. I just think, he's got a lot of wear and tear, a lot of knockout losses. I think it's not so much that his body's starting to fail him, but, they're all big punches there in the heavyweight division, and it's not really looking good for him.
What's interesting for me is when you do look at that top 15 heavyweight rankings, and you look at some of the fighters that are pretty up there, like Bigfoot Silva, for example, he's ranked number 12th. And Frank Mir, he's ranked number 10th. Struve is number 15th. You think, does the UFC sort of keep him around? Because even though he's not winning fights, he's still a bit of a name, and you can still put him up against up-and-coming heavyweights and have him sort of pad their record a bit, build their name a bit so more people know them. I guess in a lot of ways, Gonzaga could almost have that role in the UFC where they put him up in these cards, a lot of international cards perhaps, and put him up against young up-and-coming UFC heavyweights. Because when I'm looking at this top 15, it doesn't look like there's too much going on in the division when you go under sort of number 8 in the rankings.
The top guys, they've remained the same for a number of years. I actually read an article, I think it was on Sherdog, and I think it was by Jordan Breen, talking about how not much has changed in the last 10 or so years. Obviously, you've got new names and faces, but the fact that Arlovsky was the champion, 10 or so years ago, is fighting Fedor, obviously lost, but now here he was not too long ago, thought about maybe he'd be fighting for the title, and people calling for him to fight for the title, not because they just loved him, but because they legitimately thought, hey, he can go in there, he can challenge Verdum, potentially beat him. So the heavyweight division, it's one that has the most longevity, but at the same time, and I like your theory about using him to pad other fighters. It looks like the UFC are bringing in a lot of young heavyweights. I just think it's very tough for them to sort of crack that top 10 and really make names for himself. They are doing that slowly, though. At the end of the day, though, if you do have a lot of losses on your record like Gonzaga does, it's only a matter of time. So I really think he's only got one more loss in him in the UFC. If he wins his next fight, if they give him a next fight, then I guess he lives to fight another day. But the way the UFC has been going cut crazy recently, if they don't cut him now, I definitely see them cutting him if he loses again.
Yeah, I agree with you. If he has one more fight, I have a feeling he'll have one more fight. If he wins that fight, I think he'll be around for quite some time. But it's interesting because the heavyweight division, I mean, it looks like a lot of people have already fought each other. I mean, you got Kane, you got Stipe, you got Overeem, you got Rothwell, you got JDS, Arlovsky, Mark Hunt, Frank Mir, all those guys. And I guess the UFC are worried they're struggling to come up with fresh new matchups. So interesting to see what happens there. But look, Derek Lewis, big win. It looks like the world's his oyster. What do you reckon? Do you agree with this call-out that he's got against Roy Nelson?
I was just going to say the other thing about the heavyweight division is that most of these guys are fairly old. So I think that's why the UFC needs to get some new stars, because you look at the top 10, you think a lot of these guys, you feel like they could retire any day now. mean, even the champion's pretty old. Josh Barnett, Mark Hunt, a lot of the Arlovsky. You think, how many fights do they really have in them? So I understand their push to get some new stars. Derek, yeah, look, hey, I feel like he is almost like a lesser version of Roy Nelson. Roy Nelson, you want to watch him because he knocks people out. Derek Lewis, much the same. You don't really expect them to grapple, although, you know, that's the funny story about Roy Nelson. He does have fantastic grappling, although we just never see it. You put them together. I don't want to say there's no way this fight goes to decision, because every time you do, it ends up either happening or being a terrible fight, but you just get the feeling that someone's getting knocked out, right?
That's right, yeah. And I mean, Roy Nelson, he's already tweeted out that he's interested in that fight. To him, it seems like a great matchup, I think, and a fresh matchup for a guy like Roy Nelson who, let's be honest, has fought, you know, a lot of those guys in the top 10 division as well. I think it could make for a fun fight for a fight night card somewhere, a good main event for a fight night card somewhere. So, look, I think Lewis has the right idea. I'll be interested to see what he could do against Roy Nelson. If he can beat Roy Nelson, which I think Roy Nelson would beat him, but if he can beat Roy Nelson, then that's another great win under his belt and would elevate him. But I guess the big thing is, hopefully he's working on his grappling in between these fights and focusing on his wrestling, because if he wants to be competitive up there with guys like, you know, Cain Velasquez, Fabricio Verdum, then he's got to be prepared to get his wrestling in. And that's going to be the big question if he does ever reach that spot in the rankings.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I saw a video somewhere, not so much backstage, but it was like on Twitter at an event where Roy Nelson and Derek Lewis pretty much made the fight on the spot with Dana White, and Dana White said, okay, yep, I'm interested. So expect that fight to happen. The only thing is, when he did call out Roy Nelson, it was a very tepid call out. The mic wasn't near his face. I understand it was a bit of a touching moment because he just lost his coach, so maybe he wasn't really in the mood to you know, make a big call out. Maybe he had that weighing in on his mind, but I do wish that if you're going to call someone out, grab the mic and make a big statement. It sort of improves your chances of getting that fight happening.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Roy Nelson, he's fought Ben Rothwell before, hasn't he?
Yes.
I believe they fought previously.
Yes.
Well, that can be another fight the UFC may go for. I mean, I'm not sure if they'd go for that next or not, but with Rothwell coming off a loss and Big Roy always putting on a good fight, they may sort of cut Lewis out and put Roy Nelson up against Rothwell as well. So that could be another possibility, but I'd really rather see that Lewis-Nelson fight instead.
Yeah, well, I just think that Roy Nelson's a lot further away from the title than Ben Rothwell. I mean, he only just lost before that. People are saying he could be, you know, an ex-champ. But if they were going to do it, it would be an interesting rematch. Ben Rothwell, for those who don't know, he did beat Roy Nelson. It was a split decision that was all the way back in 2007. So, you know, as much as we lament rematches more often than not, I feel like there's been enough time between fights where they could actually make this rematch, and I'd be excited about it.
Yeah, it's nice to have a couple of options. But moving on to the main event, Cass, I mean, Ben Rothwell versus Junior Dos Santos. Rothwell being on the program a number of times and talking about how much he was looking forward to this fight with Junior, and also talking about the fact that he has to go around the circuits and remind everybody how dangerous Junior really was. And man, did we see it tonight. What did you think of this one?
One of the things that Junior did really well was vary his attacks. The jab to the body was one of his best weapons. He used it to keep Ben at bay and to wear him down. And even though it was really effective and Ben wasn't really doing much to stop it, Junior would keep switching things up and he'd throw a straight instead. And it's things like that that kept Ben guessing and made him very unsure of himself. And it opened Ben up for a lot of Junior's biggest shots, like the left hook and the overhand right. So it was a very impressive win by Junior Dos Santos. We saw a lot more lateral movement than we did in the past. I will say, though, as good as he looked, and even though Ben Rothwell, he'd been wanting this fight for a long time, he sort of came up against the wall and, you know, it shut down his momentum, I did see some of the same issues that Junior has struggled with in the past, which is when he goes in, when fighters pressure him, he backs straight up in a straight line, his back hits the cage, and then there's a possibility to either get knocked out, which thus far he has avoided, or guys like Stipe or Cain Velasquez, they take him down, or any wrestler in the division, really. So it was an improved Junior Dos Santos. I think that staying in American top team, you see this sometimes where guys move to another camp and then their first fight isn't necessarily the greatest and people say, oh, look, it's a shit camp, it was a big mistake. And then the second fight, they sort of adjust, and their third fight, they look even better. So I think he's found his home in American top team. I did see improvements, like I said, the lateral movement, but I still see some of the same issues in Junior Dos Santos. But it's a world of difference compared to his loss against Overeem, where people were talking about how, you know, he's completely done in the division. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree. And Rothwell's unorthodox style, although has helped him get some big wins and helped him land some shots in the first round, I think it just didn't really work with Junior's technique, especially when Rothwell sort of got a bit tired after that first round. And instead of moving around and doing some of the orthodox things that he does with his hands, he was just sort of standing there in front of Junior Dos Santos, not doing too much. And that was very difficult for Rothwell to deal with. And I agree with you. I think, look, the jury's still out on Junior Dos Santos. No doubt about it, though. I think this is probably the closest impressive performance he's had since his victory over Mark Hunt in 2013. And I'm just curious to see what a Junior Dos Santos can do with some confidence. I know he's lost a lot of confidence recently. He just didn't look like himself. I think a lot of it was mentally going through the fights that he had, going through the criticisms that he had, looking at his past fights. So now that he's got a bit of confidence in himself, he knows he can still perform up to the level like he once did. I'm interested to see what happens when he goes back into that octagon against one of the top guys once again. And who knows who he's going to get next. I mean, I'm not sure who they'll put up against. And one of the things I was thinking of is giving Junior Dos Santos Andrei Arlovski next. Even if Arlovski loses against Overeem, I think that could be a good fight for GDS to have. What do you think, Cass?
Yeah, look, a win over a resurgent Ben Rothwell, it is a big one, but I agree. I think he needs to prove some more before he gets too close to the title picture again. I'd be very comfortable with him facing either Arlovski or Travis Brown, regardless of whether they win or lose. Because if you look at anyone who's ranked above them in the UFC heavyweight top 5, it's pretty much all rematches. You got Verdum, Velasquez, Stipe, Overeem. Junior's faced all of them. There's no need to do an Overeem rematch. Stipe's fighting for the title. I don't want to see Velasquez Jr. again. Not for a long time. Verdum's the champion. I reckon Arlovski or Travis Brown. I think both will be good stand-up affairs. It just depends. If Arlovski loses 2 in a row, I don't know. Then Arlovski may sort of have to start from scratch. But I really like this Travis Brown rematch. Even if he wins, if he beats Cain Velasquez, you got Travis Brown with a lot of momentum. Junior beats him. All of a sudden, he's back up in the title picture. If he loses, then that's okay. I'd rather see him versus Travis Brown than Cain Velasquez rematch.
I think if Brown wins for me, I'd maybe like to see him skip the JDS matchup, but I keep him in my back pocket because he's got a bit of steam behind him, and who knows what's going to happen in the heavyweight division. Who knows what Overeem's going to be doing. So I'd sort of keep him on the side. But yeah, I'd definitely put him up against Arlovski because in my books, I think JDS would probably beat Arlovski. And if he does, it's a good sort of confidence builder. And also, it's a good way to sell JDS to the public who may think he's still not the same fighter he once was.
Yeah, it's funny how we're talking about Arlovski because I actually think that Rothwell should potentially be fighting Arlovski. Arlovski's facing Overeem. Obviously, we don't need to see a rematch between Overeem and Ben Rothwell. Not now, not yet, not for a while. If Arlovski loses, you've got 2 guys on losses. They've fought each other. I think it'd be a good rematch. I think it'd be a good, fun fight to have, and you can sort of test out who's sitting where.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how long Rothwell will want in between fights. I mean, previously he's mentioned to us he likes a bit of a longer layover in between fights, but maybe he's looking to get back in there as soon as he can to get some of that momentum back because he knows, how much longer does he have left, what's going on with the title. He probably wants to try and get a W in as quickly as he can.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other sort of way I'm thinking of is because he originally wanted that layoff and then he realized it hurt his chances at the title. It depends. This has taken a lot of steam out of his title campaign. So now that he's lost, he may think, all right, it's kind of over for now. I need to rebuild. I might as well take 8 or 9 months, to take a break. But again, age is a factor, so he might want to get back in quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those situations as well where he's not going to get an immediate rematch with Alistair Overeem. And if Overeem beats Arlovski, he'll be on his way. So, yeah, I mean, a fight between Rothwell, Nelson, or Rothwell, Arlovski, or Rothwell and a bunch of other people would make sense. At least it's something different as well. So at least the UFC has some options.
While we're talking about heavyweights, I just want to touch on Frank Mir. Unfortunately, he got flagged by USADA, failed. Well, I don't know if we'd really say that he failed a drug test. He's waiting on the B sample, but essentially he's been notified that he failed the drug test. So it looks like his career is sort of in jeopardy. For those who don't know, he got flagged for oral turinabol. I did a little bit of reading about it. From the description of the drug, it's an anabolic steroid that helps with protein synthesis and ups your red blood count. So it basically sounds like the perfect steroid for athletes and MMA fighters. For those who don't know, according to steroid.com, which this time was my source, the use of oral turinabol turinabol, there we go, oral turinabol will significantly promote muscular endurance. Athletes won't tire out as fast, and the overall rate of recovery should be greatly improved. I mean, it's pretty much, if you're an MMA fighter, it sounds like the perfect steroid, right? But I will say, those are just the facts of what the steroid does. We don't know how it got there. Frank Mir is obviously denying any use of the drug. He says that he doesn't know how it got into his system. It's an unfortunate situation because he's saying that if he does get the 2-year suspension, which it looks like he does, it looks like he will. He doesn't have any. It's not like Yoel Romero. We can sort of say, look, it was this supplement, and USADA can go, okay, we're going to test this supplement. Oh, look, it is tainted. Okay, you get 6 months. Frank Mir doesn't have that. He doesn't know where it came from unless he sort of goes, all right, search all of Australia, search all of my past history, which obviously USADA aren't going to do. It's a very likely scenario that he's going to get that 2-year suspension. And he said that if he does get that, that's it. He's retiring. Just your initial thoughts, Dennis. What do you think about this?
Yeah, just super disappointing. Obviously suffering a big loss over there in Brisbane, and now this coming along at sort of the tail end of his career. I think it's disappointing for a lot of fans that sort of grew up with Frank Mir in a lot of ways in the UFC to see potentially his career finishing like that. And he did suggest kangaroo steaks. He said he didn't know, he can't write down or recall all the places where he ate in Australia, but he believes maybe one of the kangaroo steaks has something to do with it.
I think with the kangaroo steaks, I think he was just sort of throwing that out there anecdotally. I know that a lot of the media outlets kind of jumped on it, well, like, oh, it was the kangaroo steaks. I think what he was saying on his podcast was that he ate at a bunch of places in Australia and he doesn't know what the sort of meat treatment is like here in Australia. Maybe somebody was farming kangaroos and maybe they had some kind of hormones. I don't think he was specifically saying kangaroo steaks. And for those who don't know, kangaroos are wild. There's no such thing as a kangaroo farm, and Frank Mir kind of acknowledged that. But I think the point he was trying to make was that he literally has no idea how he got into it. And as ridiculous as that may sound, eating kangaroo, I think he was just saying it's as plausible as anything because he's never taken anything or ingested anything. So it's a big shame.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, whatever happens, I mean, it's a tough one. The substance that you mentioned is obviously a very serious one. Unlike the Yoel Romero situation, like you mentioned, it doesn't look like they're going to come to any kind of deal. So if that's it, Frank Mir losing to Mark Hunt in Brisbane and then sort of going out on that note, I think it's pretty disappointing for all the fans and also Frank Mir himself to his legacy. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. I mean, who knows what's going on in this crazy world of USADA. Maybe something can pop up, but at the moment, it's not looking good for old Frank.
The only chance that he has is the B sample. He's going to get the B sample tested. More often than not, the B sample does come back positive as well. If that's the positive, then he's getting the 2 years. If he does get suspended for 2 years, to me, retirement definitely makes sense. I mean, he's 36 years old. He was on a good run recently, but has again fallen just short of being talked about as a contender again. He's on 2 losses in a row. And if he came back after 2 years, considering that his birthday is in May, he'd likely be 39 years old. And that's a really ripe age to not only be fighting, but to be making a comeback and potentially shaking off ring rust. If there's any division that probably is not going to evolve much in that time, like we mentioned before, it's the heavyweight division. But regardless, I mean, coming back at 39 years old, that stuff. It's very hard to envision Frank being, the champ that he was in the past, or being a champ now. So he's had a lot of accomplishments in a sport. He's a 2-time champion. Not many people can say that. He's come back from huge adversity, both personal and in his career. He's reinvented himself, I think, 4 times. How many different Frank Mir physiques have we had? The skinny Frank Mir, the uber Frank Mir, the skinny again Frank Mir, this sort of hybrid somewhere in between Frank Mir who doesn't look great but is effective. So, yeah, I think he's had an amazing career, and I think hopefully this doesn't affect his chances of being in the Hall of Fame. Regardless, I think he's a Hall of Fame for sure. He's given us a lot of amazing moments, snapping people's limbs. There is just zero reason to come back and further, potentially ruin his legacy at 39 years old and risk, the possibility of any further damage.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a situation where he retires and then does a commentating job and in a couple of years returns for a couple of fights. I mean, there'll be a lot of winnable fights for him in the heavyweight division if he wants to take some easier fights down the bottom of the of the ranking, but I guess we'll have to wait and see to decide what happens with him. I really hope that the UFC or somebody gives him a commentating job if this does happen, because I know they sort of do avoid giving suspended fighters commentating jobs because they don't want to sort of reward them. But I think Frank Mir has done a lot, and one of the things that people don't really give him credit for is that amazing rivalry that he had with Brock Lesnar that led to UFC 100. I mean, that's one of the biggest ones that ever happened. And I think that really captured a lot of casual fans and did a lot for the UFC. A lot of people forget that, but Frank was a big part of that as well. So a lot of achievement on his part. I guess we'll have to wait and see what he does.
Well, the interesting thing is he was going to be doing commentary on Fox for this card, Dos Santos and Rothwell, and they actually scrapped that after this whole test thing popped up. So you're right. I would love to see Frank Mir commentating the UFC, but I just don't know if that would happen. Let's move on. Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes. It's the latest addition to UFC 200, and we'll be talking about that card a little bit later in just a few minutes, but I just want to get your thoughts, Dennis, on this fight. A lot of people not really sure what to make of it. What's your take? What do you make of it?
I think I'm happy that Tate's on the card. I think UFC 200 needs something special. A lot of hardcore fans and people that are really into the sport are really excited for this one because they know that Nunes has a real shot at beating her. But I think from a casual perspective, I don't think it's going to get too many people really excited for this card. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. I know Tate has a new deal with the UFC where she gets paid a lot more now that she's the champion. And to me, it looks like she wants to get that contract going and make a little bit of money. And I'm happy that it's added to the card. Look, no Tate fight is worse than, having this Tate fight. I think this will be a very exciting matchup. Stylistically, both of these girls could have a very, very close fight. And, I'm just happy to see her on the card. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, look, it's his second title fight on the card. This one actually for a real title, and another fight that's been met with a lukewarm reaction by a lot of the fans. People weren't exactly jumping up and down for this fight, and I think because there were potentially more hyped fights looming, such as the Holly Holm rematch, a Ronda Rousey rematch, at one point maybe even a Cyborg fight, they both showed interest in fighting at catchweight. So I think with Amanda Nunes coming out of the nowhere, people are like, really? Where did this come from? And the other thing is Amanda Nunes, her last fight was a win over Valentina Shevchenko. It was certainly a win over a tough opponent, but it wasn't the most exciting fight. It's not one where you go, bam, that's the next title contender. Like when she beat Sarah McMahon, she had so much steam. And I know it was too early for a title fight then, but she sent a statement. Like think back to when Rockhold beat Lyoto Machida and just destroyed him. And people were like, okay, forget Jacare. We need to see this man fight for the title ASAP. So it just wasn't one of those fights. Having said that, I'm not against this fight at all. I did say that if you're going to give Miesha Tate a fight at UFC 200, this a few weeks ago, Amanda Nunes isn't the right name due to sort of her mid-range star power and due to the fact that there's other juicy matchups. But at the end of the day, I do think it is a good way to sort of for the UFC to give exposure to Miesha Tate and sort of pump her up a little bit more for the future against, say, maybe a rematch down the line with Holly Holm, or more realistically, a fight with Ronda Rousey in the future. If you want to get that, it sort of takes two to tango. You need both of them to be stars, and I think this is a good way to sort of catapult Miesha. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Tate wins this, it definitely does a lot of good for her. But if she loses, then I guess the UFC are in a different position once again where Tate's out of the picture, and now you got Nunes as the champion. I'm just curious why they didn't just do this Holly Holm rematch, because I feel like that's a fight that people would get a lot more excited about. I know I'm not a fan of immediate rematches, but I really felt like Holm was winning most of that fight until the very end. And I'd be interested to see what happens in a rematch. And if Holm wins, then you've got that Ronda Rousey fight again. And if Holm loses for a second time, well, then Tate really builds her legacy a lot more. So in that regard, I thought maybe that could be a lot more exciting for fans. But look, I mean, maybe they're trying to build Nunes. If Nunes wins on UFC 200, there'll be a lot of people watching, and then she can get the rub and become a bigger star herself. So a lot of that makes sense to me. But I probably would have preferred a different matchup. Even fights like having Kat Zingano fight Miesha Tate would sort of excite me more than this Nunes fight, and also because Zingano is a lot more well-known by the casual fans. But look, they could do a lot worse. And once again, I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think, and it's going to be a very exciting matchup. So I'm excited for that aspect of it.
Yeah, I disagree on pumping up Nunes. I don't think they really expect Nunes to win. I think most people expect Miesha Tate to win. I think it's more about pumping up Miesha Tate. I think the reason why they may, and this is just a theory, the reason why they may not have given Holly Holm that rematch is because they wanted Holly Holm to wait. They wanted her to fight Ronda Rousey. I mean, personally, I don't really think it makes sense because she could be sitting out there for a year or more. And like she said, who knows if Ronda Rousey will come back? She probably will, but you only really have that and it's not really a guarantee, but only now does it seem like she'll come back. So I think Holly did the right thing, but again, it's not what the UFC wanted. So I think the UFC is sort of looking at it like, no, you had your chance, we're not going to do that. And it isn't unlike the UFC to sort of punish their talent and do things like that. So I think in this case, they're like, you had your chance, we're going to give Amanda Nunes the shot, and you missed out. The other thing about this fight is that it doesn't really seem like a UFC 200 caliber fight, right? It kind of feels like the co-main event to a different card, maybe a Jon Jones card or a lightweight title fight or a welterweight title fight. And so you think, why didn't they just have the lightweight title belt or the welterweight belt on the line at UFC 200? Like, Lawler versus Thompson would have been a great scrap and something that a lot of people would have been excited about. But here's the thing. There's already a bunch of great scraps on the card. There aren't, however, many women's fights. If you're going to do UFC 200, a landmark card, which in a way is like a time capsule of where the UFC is at this point, you look at 100, it was the era of Lesnar and GSP, and they were main eventing. You should probably include an important part of today's UFC, and that's the women's division. You can't have Ronda Rousey, so you put the champ on there, Miesha Tate. Not only that, but the main reason why this fight is at UFC 200 is because, in my opinion, I know you said that Miesha won't draw a lot of casual fans. I think she draws from a different demographic than Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, and what Robbie Lawler would have drawn. She draws the female fans and the other major media outlets. And I think that with the combination of Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz and those drawing powerhouse, as well as adding Miesha and Amanda Nunes, I think it's a good recipe to sort of draw big pay-per-view buys.
Right. Well, I guess I didn't think about it from that point. I mean, if you do have a historic card that people are going to look back on, you probably do want your bantamweight champion on there. So, I mean, I guess from that perspective, it's good. And look, I'm just happy she's on the card, man. I know a lot of people are complaining that it's not the matchup that they would have wanted. It's not the matchup that I would have wanted. But look, at least she's on the card. At least she's fighting. At least she's a part of history. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, she's made the bill, but let's talk about this card in general. UFC 200, still got a couple of fights to go, and we don't know what they might be. My prediction is they're probably going to be fight past prelims, but let's look at the card as it stands now. So we've got Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor in the main event. You got Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar for the interim featherweight title. You got Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight title, like we just mentioned. Cain Velasquez versus Travis Brown, Johnny Hendricks, Kelvin Gastelum, Gegard Mousasi, Derek Brunson, Diego Sanchez, Joe Lozon, Sage Northcutt versus Enrique Martin, Takanori Gomi versus Jamila Kazingano versus Juliana Pena. So, there's a lot of names, there's a lot of talent. So, why the mixed reaction to UFC 200? People are saying it's not crazy, it's not what we wanted. I think this is a heavily underrated card. It's solid from top to bottom. There's only one low-name fighter thus far, and he's facing Sage Northcutt. You've got 2 title fights, 3 5-round fights, 2 title eliminators. So it's good times all around. I think the reason why people feel it's a bit anticlimactic is because we've already seen the marquee fights. These are rematches. The biggest fights on the card are rematches. Like, if you look at, say, something like UFC 189, you had McGregor and Mendes, Lawler versus McDonald. The biggest fights had a lot of intrigue because they hadn't happened yet. Okay, Lawler versus McDonald was a rematch, but it was for the belt. Generally very anticipated. This was a bit of a different story. You look at UFC 194, which is another massive one. It had Aldo McGregor, Rockhold Weidman, not to mention plenty of other sort of mouth-watering firsts. And I think that might be why the mixed reaction to UFC 100. I also think that quite a few of these fights aren't the ones that people have been asking for. Again, Rockhold Weidman was in such high demand that Jacare got completely shut out so the UFC couldn't make it happen. And you can't really say the same thing about Aldo Edgar. It's a great fight. It's not the one that the fans were asking for. I think same with Diaz McGregor. It's not necessarily the fight that, the fans were asking for. Also, I think a lot of people were expecting either a surprise announcement that either Ronda or GSP would return and maybe hype it up. They may have hyped it up for themselves too much. And, when I say that, I'm talking about us as well. I don't know about you, Dennis, but I know I expected either a GSP or potentially Ronda. And so I think the other thing is when you announce a card a year in advance, it opens up for so many possible matchups, so much thought, so much, conversation that almost regardless of what you're going to put on there, fans are going to be disappointed. But despite all that, it's still a very, very stacked card. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, look, I think the card's stacked. I understand what people are saying when they say they're a little bit disappointed. And who knows? You mentioned there's a few matches to be announced. Who knows what's going to happen in this crazy world of MMA? By the time we finish recording, imagine GSP is on the card, and then we've got to redo the whole episode. No, I'm just kidding. We release this episode the way it is. But It's one of those things. Aldo and Edgar, great fight. It's a rematch, and maybe people just aren't very excited to see them fight. Nate Diaz and McGregor, to me, there's nothing really on the line in that fight. They're not really fighting for anything. I mean, okay, if McGregor loses twice, it's going to be a big deal for McGregor, and if Nate Diaz wins, it's going to be another sort of feather in his hat. But there's no title. There's no what's next. There's no sort of what do these guys get except for a massive payday. I feel like when I look back at UFC 100, and I look back at the top 3 fights there, which was Lesnar versus Mir in the rematch for the title, GSP versus Alves, and Henderson versus Bisping, I felt like people really thought, look, what happens in this fight is really going to affect what we're going to see in the next year. And even though Miesha Tate is putting up a title against Nunes, I think that whole division, everybody's sort of confused as to what's going on, who's going where, who's going to fight Cyborg, when Ronda Rousey is going to return, what Holly Holm is going to do. So they're not sort of really sure what's going to happen, even if she does win. And with Aldo and Edgar as well, a lot of people are like, well, is he going to fight Conor McGregor or is he not going to fight Conor McGregor? I mean, Audi Attar was on our program, said McGregor's not vacating his title because if he would have done it, he would have done it by now, and he'll definitely defend his title there. But a lot of people are skeptical about that. What do these men really win? What's really on the line at this card? And is it more of a what's happening now in a sports snapshot that won't hold up in 10, 15 years' time when we look back at UFC 300, for example? So it's one of those things where I can totally understand where people are coming from, but I think as soon as the promos and the press conferences start and you see Conor McGregor sitting there again with Nate Diaz and Aldo's in the room and he's starting to trash McGregor and Edgar's there and he's like, hey, what about me? And somewhere in the corner is Miesha Tate. You start realizing how much of a magnitude this event is actually going to have, and I think a lot more people are going to get excited for it then.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely massive. I mean, listen, you can have whatever opinion you want about the card. At the end of the day, you guys are going to be paying for it or not paying for it, so you can feel however you want about it. I think it's a bit easier to sort of say that now that it's sort of announced and it's far away, as opposed, you're right, as opposed to when it comes down to a month away or 2 months away. I think people are going to get a lot more excited, and the promotion for this card is just going to be absolutely astronomical. I know that a lot of people are saying, well, UFC 198 is a lot more stacked. I would argue with that. It's very top heavy. You got Verdum and Miocic for the belt. You got Jacare versus Vitor Belfort, Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. I mean, look, that's a fun fight. I'm looking forward to it, but I mean, it's not a marquee fight. I guess the fact that Anderson Silva is third from the top is pretty crazy. You got Cyborg, you got Shogun, you got Damian Maia. There's a lot of good fights, but when you start to look at the very bottom of UFC 198, it starts to thin out, whereas UFC 200, it remains consistent. The other reason why, and I see people saying UFC 198 is going to be bigger than UFC 200, there is no way. UFC 198 is built for a target market that is Brazil, who don't pay for pay-per-view. They get the pay-per-views for free, or they get it on cable TV. And a lot of people in America, I'm sure the hardcore fans will be super pumped for this card, but I think when you've got a bunch of people that don't speak English and don't connect to the as many of the American fans, I don't know how well UFC 198 is going to do in pay-per-view buys. I think it'll do great, but I think if people are expecting it'll do 1 million or 800,000, prepare to be surprised. UFC 200, with all the, with Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, again, the hardcore fans may look at that and be like, I'm not that interested in that. The amount of media that is going to cover that event is going to be astronomical. You got Jose Aldo Franchetti, you got Miesha Tate, she herself is going to get a lot of media attention as well. I bet you majority of the questions are going to be about Ronda Rousey. Sports Illustrated, ESPN, all those outlets are going to cover that. So I'm not. Look, my mind's not blown. Dana White said that this card will blow your mind. My mind's not blown. I still think it's missing that, holy shit, oh my god factor that GSP would certainly provide. But for people saying that it's an average card, and I see that, you're entitled to your opinion, but this card is, from the names that we have now, it's literally stacked from top to bottom.
Yeah, well, it's one of those situations where I really felt like maybe an Anderson Silva needs to be on UFC 200. And maybe he needs to have sort of a super fight against someone like that. But I think one of the things that's working against the UFC, and it's pretty funny, is the fact that UFC 198 and UFC 199 both have great fights on them. And people are wondering, well, why are all these fights happening now? Why aren't you saving them till 200? I guess a lot of people want to see a lot of those big fights, like, for example, Uriah Faber versus Dominic Cruz, or the rematch between Weidman and Luke Rockhold. I think a lot of people were hoping that that would sort of fall around that UFC 200. I think a lot of people were hoping that Jon Jones would possibly fight DC in the co-main event at UFC 200. So because these fights have been so spread out evenly, and you got all these big cards, I guess a lot of the time, as fans, you're used to a few dud pay-per-views, like a pay-per-view where you have one title fight. You might not care about it that much, and that might carry on for a few pay-per-views. We've had it happen before. And here you've got 198 and 199, which both look like they'll deliver excellent fights. So you don't have that sort of downtime to make you appreciate UFC 200. You got UFC 197, and if DC wasn't injured, you'd see Jon Jones fight DC. Could that be the fight of the year? Could that be better than anything that we see UFC 200? Maybe. But if you sort of conditioned to having these great fights back to back, it takes away some of the special factor from UFC 200. And you look at that card and you go, yeah, that's a great card. But last month I watched, UFC 199. I watched these two title fights. And then month before that, I watched this title fight. Or UFC 197, I think I saw the best fight of the year. So I think that sort of conditions people to expecting even more. Whereas around UFC 100, we didn't have these crazy cards where you had these matchups that people just went crazy over. Now we've got these massive super cards. I mean, you mentioned it perfectly. It's a Brazilian card for the Brazilian market, and they made it pretty stacked. You wouldn't see that before. So I think a lot of people are like, well, we want to be even more impressed. Whenever you give someone something decent, they want it even better. And I think with these great cards back-to-back in front of 200, maybe a little bit of that is what happened to the fans.
Well, I think you're right. Like UFC 199, you look at that. Okay, you got Rockhold versus Weidman, Cruz versus Faber. I have a strong feeling that if you put any of those fights on UFC 200, especially as the main event, I think people would complain. I think people would potentially complain more than they are now. And then you look at UFC 1, and even 199, like it's a good card, but once you get to the prelims, it really does fade out. It's top heavy. 197, again, a great card, but once you get down to the prelims, it starts to fade out a little bit. 198, that's pretty stacked all the way through. I guess the other interesting thing, I guess what people were expecting, and you have every single right to expect that, is for UFC 200 to be very, very top heavy. I guess the other thing that I'm thinking about is that with the prelims, we're going to get those for free, right? So in a sense, it's going to be an amazing card, but what are you paying for? Like Gegard Mousasi versus Derek Brunson, that may be headlining the prelims, depending on if they're going to do 6 fights on the main pay-per-view or 5. They've already got 3 fights that are 5-round fights. I don't know, like, you're either going to get Johnny Hendricks versus Kelvin Gastelum opening the card, which is insane, considering that Johnny Hendricks has been headlining for, 3 years now? So if you've got Gegard Mousasi and Derek Brunson headlining the prelims, that's like a co-main event to an international card. Or Diego Sanchez versus Joe Lozon, either way. And then you got Cain Velasquez. He's not even in the middle of the card. He's at the bottom of the card. So I think the bottom of the actual pay-per-view itself, it's pretty solid. I guess here's my question. I don't know how much time you've sort of had to think about it, Dennis. If you could sort of restructure things, if you could add one fight to this pay-per-view, what would you add if you had your choice?
Oh, well, no doubt about it. I have GSP versus an Anderson Silva, or GSP versus someone else. It just needs a super fight, a big super fight, a big fuck-off super fight that will get people excited. And it maybe has nothing to do with MMA and nothing to do with what's going to happen tomorrow, but it's happening today. And 10 years from now, you go, hey, I was at that historic event at that new arena, UFC 200. And yeah, Nate Diaz, he went on and he never won the title. And Conor McGregor, yeah, we all know 5 years ago he decided to retire and go into movies. And yeah, Aldo's no longer around and Edgar is just retired. And yeah, Tate, she only had a title for a couple of times. But I saw GSP take on Anderson Silva in a super fight. And I'll never forget that. And I think that's what people need. One of those fights that sort of survives time, that you look back and you go, wow, that's huge. I guess you get that a lot in like sports like the NBA when you see playoff game number 3 between the Bulls and blah, blah, blah. And you always tell your friends, I was there for that match where Jordan scored 40-plus points. And I guess people are having trouble saying that. But anyway, back to what you asked.
That was great. Yeah. Hey, listen, that was a great rant, and you sold me. This is like a Denzel Washington movie, like Remember the Titans, and that was your "They Will Remember Us" speech. That was great, man. Hey, listen, you sold me. And don't get me wrong. Listen, for the people that are saying that UFC 200 didn't meet their expectations, I completely understand it. I think that the other thing you got to remember is the UFC only has a certain amount of stars, and they can't pack UFC 200 too much. Otherwise, UFC 201 through to 203 are going to look like Fight Pass prelims. And not to mention the international cards and the actual Fight Pass cards. So, I mean, they could stick Jones and DC on UFC 200, but would it really do much? I mean, would they? They're going to do a lot of pay-per-view buys anyway, right? You stick it on that card, you might get yourself a few 100,000 more, or you can save it for UFC 201, and then you can build a pay-per-view around that. You know, if I was going to add another card and going with the theme of super fights and going with the theme of GSP, I'd love to see GSP versus Lawler. And you might think, well, it's just a welterweight fight. No, it's like the past versus the present. You've got the greatest welterweight in history in George St. Pierre taking on the new king, which is Robbie Lawler. I think that would be insane. And, you know, we saw the whispers. Ariel Helwani was reporting how it's not really close to happening. I think they wanted that to happen, and I think in an ideal world you have that. And I don't think anybody will be people are going to complain regardless, but I think it'd be a lot harder to complain about UFC 200 if you got GSP versus Robbie Lawler. That's a super fight. You can stick it in, you'd have to stick that in the main event, I think even above Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. But yeah, if I had things my way, and I'm still kind of hoping that one of those two fights that's left to announce is that one, but I'm guessing it's just going to be Fight Pass prelims.
Yeah, and it's if you compare it to sort of like, and I know a lot of MMA fans aren't pro wrestling fans, but if you compare it to WrestleMania, which is like their UFC 200 once a year, they always have the Undertaker match, which is for people that aren't pro wrestling fans. He's this guy that's been around forever. Basically, he's a big deal, and everybody always looks forward to that match, no matter what happens on the card. And a lot of the times, they have really, really crappy WrestleMania cards. Like this year, they had a terrible WrestleMania main event. I watched it. I was disappointed, but you still had Undertaker doing his showcase fight, and that was always the match that people looked back on, and they were like, "Oh wow, that's exciting." So definitely agree with you, Kat. I mean, the Lawler GSP fight would have been great. Just any kind of super fight would have been great, but unfortunately, it looks like GSP is going to be doing dinosaur TV shows. So hopefully, he can find some time between, you know, his Jurassic World experience to come and entertain us peasant fans at UFC 200.
What a choice, man! What a choice! And the other thing about Undertaker, if you're still thinking like, why is he big? Well, he was undefeated for like 20 years. Yes, pro wrestling, fake undefeated, but I guess he was like the Fedor of the wrestling world. So people are like, is this the year that he's finally going to be defeated? Here's the other crazy thing. You mentioned WrestleMania. That happens every year. So it kind of gets expected that, all right, this year, the pro wrestling world, the WWE are going to put something together. UFC 100 was in 2009. That's, 7 years ago? By the time UFC 200 rolls around, it's going to be almost 7 years to the date. That's another huge amount of pressure when you think about it. This is an event that's been 7 years in the making. It's... Look, I mean, we've just thrown out a few theories. I'm not saying it's impossible to live up to expectations, but it's pretty close to impossible. It's very hard. Just give us GSP versus Robbie Lawler and it'll be happy. And I think, honestly, a lot of things didn't really go the UFC planned on. I think if the UFC had their way, Conor McGregor would have won. They would have lured in GSP with a much better fight with Conor McGregor and said, you know, George, come back. You'll make like $1 billion and then he can, you know, piss off and go play with dinosaur bones. Then there's the fact that Ronda Rousey is out. I'm sure the UFC are spewing about that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they can really only sort of piece the card together with what they've got, which is still very good.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, UFC 100, it's always going to be tough to beat it because you had Brock Lesnar as the heavyweight champion. It was this rematch that everybody wanted to see with Frank Mir. Frank had that thing going for him where he already beat Lesnar initially, and everybody wanted to see if he could do it again. And Lesnar, you know, did his best promo work going into that with a countdown, and so did Frank Mir. And it was just a lot fireworks and dynamite going into that one. So it's just tough to compete when you have a headline like Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir. And then what happened afterwards with Brock Lesnar jumping on the mic, cutting that promo, I mean, you look back on it, you're like, wow, just wow. It's still to this day, you look back on it and you're like, wow, what a moment. So it's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, and I think as the card gets a little bit closer, we'll go through it, we'll break it down, we'll sort of look at each individual matchup, you know, whether it makes sense or not, what we think about it stylistically, all that good stuff. But for now, that's our initial reaction, our initial very prolonged, detailed, extensive reaction to UFC 200. I mean, again, like you said, GSP might be announced tomorrow and we may have to completely redo this, and next week we'll be going all over our thoughts. We may change our mind, but that's pretty much it. And I think for now, it's pretty much another episode. Dennis, any final words, anything we need to remind the fans about?
Yeah, guys, at the moment we're not doing our technique of the week, but we have some exciting news. We're going to have a new technique of the week series starting soon. We're going to be shooting it this week. And look out on our social media, on our Twitter at SubmissionAUS and our Facebook, facebook.com/SubmissionRadioAUS. And we'll give you a hint or a clue who it might be. But he is a big, big legend here in Australia, and you guys are going to really enjoy it. So look forward to it because we are.
Oh, no, not just in Australia, internationally. This isn't some name that we've dug out from, the caves of Australia in MMA or kickboxing or anything. This is a big name that everybody will know once they see. So we're super, super excited. Like Dennis said, we're shooting him this week. So good times to come. Don't forget to hit us up on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. We love all the feedback that we've been getting recently. Drop all your comments down in the comment section below if you're checking this out on YouTube. On pretty much anything we've discussed, the Frank Mir situation, UFC Croatia, and of course UFC 200. I think that's the big one that everybody's talking about. So give us your thoughts. If you disagree with anything that we've said, you can absolutely get the fuck. No, I'm just kidding. You can just tell us what you think. We're always open to conversation. If you look at the comments, we're always happy to chat with you guys and sort of break things down, discuss them, etc., etc. It's like an extension of the show. And keep up the love on iTunes. We'll be getting a lot of awesome 5-star reviews. Give us however many stars you think we deserve. We won't hold anything against you. We love it. Until then, we'll catch you guys next week.